And so I'm just going to drive aimlessly, basically, and then you can just help me get back.
Sure.
If that works.
Yeah, if we end up in the river, then we're going to be in trouble.
Right,
but,
then it's going to be an issue.
We did have a truck recently, I think over on Lake Wausau. It happens about once a year. Somebody's out in the ice, and it just,
they get out,
right.
That's the end.
Yeah, and then there's a fine. I mean, lakes up north, I mean, I think there's a fine every day that you're in there, and then they have to come and fish you out. And so it's just not cheap. And then, of course, probably your vehicle is ruined, probably.
I would
guess.
imagine.
I mean, I don't think it takes long, and you're just going to have irreparable damage. So
I am terrified of ice fishing. Like,
yeah, I certainly wouldn't drive my vehicle out there. I mean, even if it's 3 feet thick, I just, no thanks, I'll walk.
Yeah.
Maybe a snowmobile, things like that. We did when we were kids. You're just, fearless about that stuff. But you get older, and if it's a vehicle, I mean, it's just not cheap.
Yeah. I guess you start thinking about how much is this going to cost?
Right.
maybe it's not so much my health or safety. It's what is the cost going to be if I mess this up? So.
And mistakes are made. I mean, there's always moving water under some places. There's like a live, there's a source in there, like a little stream that's passing, and then it, so it's thick here, but right over here is and you just don't know that. So I don't know. Roll the dice, I guess, if you want. A little Russian roulette or something.
Right, exactly. That's the weird thing. Like for me, I can't. Like I love roller coasters. I'll strap myself into whatever and let's go do it. But like jumping off a cliff or skydiving, like throwing myself off of something, or whatever, I can't do the extreme stuff. But trusting someone else built something right, I'm all in.
Yeah, it seems like, the probability of surviving is much higher. We used to take the guys when I was in charge of the house formation to Great America or up to Valley Fair, and the last time I went, I don't know if that was like 2010, but I just couldn't do it anymore. I mean, you get to an age where you can't handle the aggression of those rides, and I just had to go sit in the van. And of course, high school guys mocked me for the rest of it.
You don't let it down very easily.
Fine, you need to call your mommy? Yeah. But of course, we also did like one of the spinners, not the tilt-a-whirl, but something like that, as if I wasn't already having enough trouble.
Right.
And that just flips you upside down. Your stomach can't recover.
I can't do the spinning stuff. I've never really been into the spinning stuff, but
that's a common thing for like your county fair and state fair. Those what I loved were the G-forces, and sometimes you'd get in that front car of a roller coaster, and that's that changes things, because you get up over the cusp of the hill, and then you're just looking straight down, and you're waiting. There's that pause. The rest of the roller coaster catches up to you, and
exactly.
Definitely puts the fear of God in you. It gets the adrenaline rush. And when I was younger, I loved those rides, but I'm all done.
Yeah.
Like lots of things, you just retire.
Yeah, and then some of them, they get so extreme. I'm like, I'm good. Where's the little one?
They've come a long way.
The little one.
They go really high and they go really fast. And there's the one down, I think, Sandusky. It's not far from Cleveland, and it looks right out on Lake Erie. And I've seen pictures. It looks gorgeous. It'd be a really be a fun one to go to. I just never got there.
Is that Cedar Point?
That's it.
That's the one I've always wanted to go there too.
Right.
Yeah. I know there was one. We went on a mission trip one time. Went to an amusement park as our free day, and the kids like forced me and shamed me into getting on the one that's a big circle and it goes up a tower and then it drops you. Like those. I hate those things.
Giant drops. Yeah.
And I'm yelling at the poor lady down there, like, do the right thing, let me off.
Right.
She didn't, and I screamed all the way down.
Right. Those are unique. I mean, you got to take your glasses off, and if you have flip-flops or whatever, because stuff can come flying off. So,
yeah.
So we officially started this thing? I mean, we're
think so,
on?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, either way.
I want to tell, people that are watching this that men are not great at multitasking, so when I watch you make these videos and you're driving and talking at the same time, I went to confession last night just to be safe. I thought, well, I don't know how this is going to end, so I want to make sure that I'm ready. And and that's always a good thing to do. I mean, if there's anything that has any element of danger, of course I speak a little bit facetiously, but it was time. We had our gathering of priests. They do these now in La Crosse and here in Wausau. We just had our first, where we have, it's like an evening of recollection with holy hour and a nice talk. Father Woody Pace gave a meditation on his time in India, and then a chance to go to the confession, and we had a little meal afterwards. And just to promote priestly fraternity and to help us, we live in challenging times. That's all. That's what the world always is characterized by. But no, it was good. Anyway, I had a chance to go to confession, and I did it. So whatever comes, if this thing goes south on us,
that's right.
Please God, we'll be ready. Right.
Well, if my wife had your number, she probably would have called you and asked you to go get confession as well.
Right.
Because she knows my driving.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's it. How long are you married? How long?
We just celebrated 25 years in June.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
The big silver anniversry.
Yeah.
It goes by so fast, and they say the next 25 are going to go faster.
I think so. I think so. Yeah, it's like a blink of an eye. My kids, 3 of them are adults now. It's like, what happened there?
Sending checks home, 10% off the top.
Yeah, I wish. I'm thinking tithe back.
My dad always said that. He said, well, you guys will be sending checks home pretty soon.
That's right.
The money in that house only went one way, out. It never came back.
Yeah. I told my kids, I said, there's 2 things with your life. I want you to be happy, and I want you to be able to take care of me down the road. So those are the 2 things you need to focus on. However that needs to happen.
Right.
You do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, sometimes as we get older, when my dad was coming to the end of his life, Mom took care of him as long as she could at home, but the time did come, those last 6 months, he was in a nursing home, and that went as well as one could hope. But before he moved there, Mom would ask us to help, and I got to give my dad a shave one time, and it's just like one of the most moving things, because you just think of all the things that your parents did for you when you were too little, and to even know that they were doing these things. But for me, to do that for Dad, and he was very humble, he allowed me to do it, and it was one of those things that I'll carry for all my days, that it just felt so good to be able to give something back. You could never repay your parents, suitably, but to say, I hope you know how grateful I am for all the things that you did, and I can't even list all those things because I wasn't yet old enough to know. But, once you become a parent, I think that's the beauty of, then you see your parents so differently because you're doing the things that they did for you.
Right.
And what a blessing. I mean, then you kind of like, oh my gosh.
And as grandparents, you see them laughing at you, having to deal with all the things you put them through.
Yeah. My mom would always say, I love to see the grandkids come, and I'm probably even happier when they go.
Right, exactly.
Grandma, can we stay overnight? No, not this time.
No. And they hop up on sugar.
Right, exactly, yeah. Here, have this Coke and a Snickers. Have a good night.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, you said something interesting a little bit ago before we, quote unquote, started, about your dad when he was at the end of his life, that he never forgot the sign of the cross, and that was one thing he stayed with him.
He had dementia, maybe full Alzheimer's, and so he lost a lot of things in those last years. But Mom would always pray with him, and the last word that I think that he was able to say, he could always say amen. He always knew when the prayer was over, and he was always able to make the sign of the cross. Those were things that he retained right until the end, and I think those things that that he learned from his mom and dad, they music too has a great power. You see, like especially church hymns, they do this a lot with people that struggle with dementia and Alzheimer's, is they'll just come in and play those songs, and they smile like kids because they remember those things. There's a part of us that God protects, that disease, sickness, all that stuff kind of runs its course and damages us, and in the end will take our lives. But there's a part of us that nothing can touch, and that's the part that we discover is really the spiritual part of us, that is where our memories are and where we experience love, but also where suffering is, by God's grace, is kind of ennobled. So anyway, good stuff.
Yeah, that is. And so, I can't remember, how long have you been a priest? Because I remember we were talking about, I've been here 17 years, and you were at Aquinas when I got here.
Yeah,
so
all those years. I'll be 24 years in June.
24 in June.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I hang out with the young guys, but they assure me that I'm not young anymore. I'll be 50 this summer, so half a century, and it won't be too long. Sometime next year, I haven't done the math, but then more than half of my life, and that'll be for the duration. And I've been a priest longer than I haven't been, and you know that too. Now that for the rest of your life, you've been married longer than you were single.
Yes,
and that is really beautiful. I mean, your life in your subconscious mind, if you have dreams, it's always like, I'm always a priest. I'm always, and you're probably always married if you have a dream. And so amazing how our mind starts to kind of accept that this is who I am.
Yeah, and looking at time and relativity, time like of that,
it goes by.
It goes by so fast.
I mean, we're just a couple weeks till Lent, and when I was a kid, Lent lasted forever. But these days, it seems like it's over snap of a finger, you know. So, and then you get to Easter, and then the time between Easter and Pentecost is even faster than Lent, and then it's summer.
Yeah.
And summers in Wisconsin last about 3 days. So it seems, you know, it just goes by. This part, by the way, I ride my bike out here.
Oh, do you really?
Marathon County, I never really rode bike when I was in Marshfield in Wood County. I used to hike all the time, but I'm getting older, so a bike is easier on your joints. But I should have started riding bike in Wood County because it's flat. This county is crazy. Hills everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, you know, Rib Mountain and then all these ripples that just go for miles. So you're up and down.
Yeah.
It's a pretty county. It's a pretty area.
I bet.
And you can see all the colors in the fall because of the hills. Whereas in Wood County, it's flat, so you might not see as much or as far. But here, the hills do have their advantages, but they beat up your lungs a little bit, I'll say that.
Do you take the same route all the time?
I have some routes that you kind of like your go-to, and the key is like the familiar, you know where you're going, and they're safe. They're kind of off away from traffic. Like I've ridden, this is County U, which I say stands for undulate because it goes up and down. I've ridden it all the way out to Marathon, but this is a busier road sometimes, and you just kind of pick your moments where people are pretty good around bikes, but you know, people driving these days, they're distracted. They're making like these unscripted videos. They're just doing crazy stuff that they shouldn't be doing. I don't know.
Cameras everywhere.
Exactly. You know, you can tell. I mean, I've almost been hit by guys like you, Chris.
Right.
But we're in the forgiveness business,
That's
so I
right.
guess so.
Yes, we are.
Turn turn the other cheek. Just
That's
pray
right.
for our enemies.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
That's right. Right. Exactly. At least you got on video.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
It's all about being famous these days.
How many hits?
Right.
Speaking of which, I've watched some of the other videos, and I've seen. I think Father Weller is your #1 guy so far in terms of the number of views.
Of the views.
I think maybe Valentina's #2.
Okay.
But my goal is to take number. You know, I want first place.
You would take over. Yeah.
I'll tell my mom. My mom will watch this probably like, you know, I can get her watch it half a dozen times. And,
well, that's good because that's the views I have is my mom.
Yeah.
So your mom's watching, my mom's watching, and we're we'll be up there.
It's pretty. It's pretty out here today. It's the sun and the snow, and it's the days are getting longer though. That makes us happy too.
Yes. Yeah. So when you ride your bike, is there a minimum amount of miles that you want to get in, or is there?
I really didn't do any bike riding before last year, so I'm still kind of new to it. So I would say now if I go out, if I'm going to go, I go for a 20 mile, right? But I think probably my one route is usually about 30. I was just talking to Father Dan Thielen. He's probably the premier cyclist in the diocese, and so he's done a lot of biking. And you learn from other people. That's the great thing about any hobby, is that you kind of get to know things about yourself and about what things you like to do by way of goals. So we have a lot of rails to trails in Wisconsin. You know,
okay.
So they were all railroad track beds, and now they're all kind of like they take this granite and they crush it, so it's not asphalt, which is my favorite surface because it's smooth. But so we have this Mountain Bay Trail that originates in Rib Mountain, goes to Green Bay. It's about 86 miles, and I've done a number of rides on that. But I said to Father Thielen just this morning that maybe I'll ride the whole thing just over. Mm-hmm. I have a classmate who lives in Green Bay. I'd stay overnight, get a ride back. But to do that in a day, for me, that'd be a PR. I've never done it. And then one of the things that cyclists like to do is a century ride. So that's 100 miles in a day. I don't know if I've got that in me, but you know, these are things that you like to maybe try out. And but how far I usually go depends on who you're with. I mean, I think cycling is a very social sport too. Yeah. It's nice to go with folks, and there are a lot of great, beautiful trails, and you pack your lunch and just go for the day, see what you can see. I mean, I like hiking probably better, but you can't cover near the ground.
Sure.
I mean, 10-mile hike is, I mean, you can do that in 40 minutes on a bike, whereas it takes 3 hours to hike that, you know. So.
Yeah. Is it a time when you go, if you're by yourself, are you just like kind of like mentally just zoned out, just clearing your head? Are you praying? Is there all of the above? Is there
I probably like my daily walks. We have Marathon Park nearby, so if I go up there, I'll sometimes make some phone calls. I do that when I'm walking, but sometimes I pray the rosary, and then sometimes it's just especially you get out in like these remote areas, it's just nice. I never listen to music. I see people with their AirPods in, and to each their own, but I just think, gosh, I mean, I'm out here, I'll talk to people on the phone, otherwise I'm just going to listen to the birds and nature. So we have a pretty area. You can do lots of hikes up on Rib Mountain, and there's a quarry up there, and anytime somebody comes and visits, we always go for a hike, because you get up there and then you can see the lay of the land. I mean, Rib Mountain is unique. You can see miles in any direction. And there's a tower observation deck up there that even gives you a greater view. So that's kind of a typical thing when people come to Wausau, like, what is there to see and do? Well, you feel like you're up for a hike, let's go.
That's great. And I saw you guys have a ski hill here.
Granite Peak. No, I did long time ago. A lot of priests do, and there's some of their younger priests right now. They're out west in Colorado, hitting the slopes.
Gunther?
He's one of them.
He's
That's
one.
right.
I know he's big into it.
Yeah, so those guys. What's nice is when they come over, then we'll get together in the evening and play euchre. You know, it's a card game and just hang out. And but it's a beautiful. I mean, there's some controversy. You know, people think there are too many runs up there, and they keep trying to maybe commercialize the hill, but it does a lot for Wausau. It brings people as far as Chicago and the Twin Cities.
Oh, wow.
And during COVID, I mean, skiing was one thing that was always kind of like accessible.
Yeah.
And it got so popular that you had to reserve a place on the weekends. I mean, if you didn't have a ticket, you weren't getting in. Yeah. And that subsided maybe a little bit, but well, we're through that one. That's no problem. I mean, it's my dad used to say, "We'll stop twice the next time."
That's a good idea.
I don't know if that next time ever
It's
came.
but
right. No, I thought there was a deer or something. I said,
Yeah.
I mean, for our viewers, they're like, Father didn't even seem nervous. Well, I went to confession last night.
That's right.
So,
I seem nervous because
right.
I did not.
There's a little division here, and I remember stopping and riding out. So
houses.
People keep moving. They love to live outside the city. I mean, this is a current phenomenon. Then pretty soon, next generation all want to live in the city, but now nice place out in the country, and then we commute in. So like a lot of inner cities, like La Crosse was kind of gutted for a while, but now it's really come back. It's beautiful. There's a lot going on downtown La Crosse, and that is a blessing.
I would like to live out in the country and just have land, and what I really want is fainting goats. I don't think I'd ever get anything done, but fainting goats.
Didn't Father Greg Bourne do something with goats?
I think
it was like a COVID thing.
He was interviewing someone about Quick Trip or something.
Right. Yeah. Do they just pass out? I mean, for no apparent reason?
It's like a thing where like they're nervous. I think it's like so they're nervous or something. It like locks up on them and they just go over. Wow. And it doesn't hurt them or anything like that. I can't imagine how it doesn't. If you
do we make them nervous? I mean, they're fine. Like they never.
If you scare them, if you sneak up on them or whatever, it's like a reflex.
Wow.
From what I remember reading about them, I just thought it was hysterical.
They say that rabbits are, I mean, because they're low on the totem pole in terms of the food chain, but that they're very excitable and that their heartbeat. I mean, you can scare a rabbit, he can go right into cardiac arrest.
Really?
So you got to be careful.
Oh, boy.
So. Of course, you tell boys that, and they're just, hey.
Right. That's
the poor rabbit. It's like, well, you guys have to read all this stuff on Wikipedia. I mean, it's like somebody should excise that, cut that out so the rabbits, stop scaring rabbits.
Save the rabbits,
well,
for sure.
There's never a shortage of them. They live underneath our deck, and I named one Federico, and I was feeding him. Somebody said, it's not really carrots, give them apples. So I got one of these apple core things, and and this guy was going to town.
Really?
Well, it turned out his name wasn't Federico. It's Federica, because she had a baby. I mean, I'm like, I didn't even know. But then that was the end. They hide their babies, so I didn't see much of her. But there's another one back, and I don't know. Because I lived in Italy for 5 years, that's how I speak my Italian with the rabbit. You try to make sure nobody's around because it looks strange.
Yeah.
People wonder, who are you talking to? The rabbit.
Right.
In Italian? Well, I mean, you may not know, but he's actually Italian, full-blooded.
That's great. That is great. We have a zoo at our house, basically.
Oh, and, what do you have?
We have, at one point, right now we have one dog, 2 guinea pigs, a chinchilla, and a bearded dragon.
Wow. Now, the bearded dragon is some sort of lizard.
It is.
What's a chinchilla? That's like
a chinchilla is like a fat squirrel, basically. It's kind of what it looks like to me. There's just this ball, and their fur is like extremely soft. But
so some sort of a cage. I mean, you can
is.
let them out, and they're not going to.
You can, and they'll sit on your shoulder, and they're like very docile. And
you said
mean.
gerbils too?
Guinea pigs. 2 guinea pigs. So
do you put them in the ball and they roll around, or they get in?
You could. I think you did it with gerbils or hamsters.
Okay.
More.
Yeah, because then we would have must have been gerbils or hamsters, because they had that at night. They're mostly nocturnal, and this thing would just roll around the floor at night, and then you get in his little treadwheel and
Right. Well, at one point though, my son called. My son was at work. This is several years ago, and he said there's a baby pigeon that fell out of his nest. Can I bring it home and try and nurse it back to life? And I thought, well, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to turn the thing out, but I was thinking like this is not going to be good. I mean, it's not going to make it. poor thing, and we can do our best. And so he brought it home, and it lived. And
Wow.
it, I guess, imprinted itself on us. And so when it got strong enough to fly, we went out the back door, like, all right, the kids named it Kevin. And like, all right, say goodbye to Kevin. We're going to let him go be a pigeon and fly away. And he never left. He stayed in our yard.
Wow.
And he stayed on our deck. And every time we opened the back door, he'd try and fly in the house. And he'd like to sit on top of the fridge.
Well, that's a good sign.
And he would sit on my head while I was out on the grill cooking chicken, which is a
Stop
little
sign.
weird. That's a stop sign.
Yeah, just the red thing there with the 4 letters. Yeah. Huh? So is he still alive, or he?
No,
yeah.
we think he met a hawk.
Yeah.
And that was that.
That's beautiful.
But yeah, he would not leave. And
could you? Could you send messages with him like a carrier pigeon? Because sometimes
because he wouldn't go far enough to deliver.
You kept dropping it off at the wrong house.
It's like a pizza delivery. It's
right.
like only a certain amount of square miles. But
friendly bird, just not very reliable.
Yeah, and when we go to my in-laws' house near Milwaukee, for Christmas or whatever, we'd have to take Kevin with us because we have to be able to feed him.
Wow.
So we put him in a cage, and then we put him outside of their house thinking, well, he'll fly away here. Nope.
Interesting.
And every night he'd come to the door, we pick him up, bring him in, put him in.
Do you know Father Eric Burns is in Sparta, and he's like the pigeon whisperer. I mean, he just, he's done this with lots of pigeons. I think there was a whole article about him, like in the Catholic Life magazine or something. With I remember one time he was driving his truck, and I was just watching him come through this parking lot, and then he whistles, and I see this bird make a beeline for the truck, and I'm like, whoa, watch out! And he flies right into the cab and lands on his little perch. I just thought this was a random pigeon, but no, he had this thing trained, and he knew the exact whistle, and I said, man, this guy, he could just go on take a show on the road. I mean,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I love animals and everything, but we don't think you can have too many.
They each have their own, personality, and they do a lot of healing ministry with like dogs and horses these days, because they are very intuitive about our emotions. They kind of can tell when we're sad, discouraged. One of my parishioners lost his wife recently, and he was talking about their dog and how the dog knows that his master is mourning and is really going through some real grieving now, and the dog knows that, of course, instinctively, and is trying to probably be empathetic, as dogs are, to kind of comfort his master. So
But I've heard of dogs too that they've trained. I was talking to someone one time, and she was talking about her daughter who's in college, and her daughter's roommate suffered from seizures, and the roommate had a dog that was trained to sense before the seizure was going to come on, and the dog would sense the seizure was coming on. The dog would walk right in front of her and just stand there, so that if she fell, she would fall on the dog.
Wow.
And
that's amazing.
Yeah, that is. How do you? I don't understand how that works, but it blows my mind.
I have a sister, Teresa, and she always had a soft spot in her heart for animals. So we always had, we lived on a farm, so we had a lot of stray dogs dropped off and different things like that. But at one point, she got a parakeet, and she named it Sam. So I remember I came home, I was in a high school seminary, and I came home for the weekend, I'm like, hi, Sam. And I just, hi. No, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the bird. You named the bird after me. Well, no, not after you, but I gave him the same name. I mean, you can't have two people in the same house with the same name. I mean, I'm not going to. So we renamed the bird Mac.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and then Mac liked my voice, so for years, anytime I'd come in, he'd just start chirping, and he also liked polka music, so polka was on the radio, he'd just start dancing back and forth.
That's great.
We put rap in one time, and he died. No, I'm kidding.
I was going to say, I was like, what?
That was too much for him. But I took him to college one time, thinking that, but he'd wake up in the morning, and a college kid, nobody wants to get up before noon, so I ended up taking him back, and I said, Mac, you and I were just not compatible right now, and he got out one time and ended up, we didn't think we'd ever see him again, but he ended up at my neighbor's, and they found him in the cattle trough, and he was eating some corn, so he survived that, and then he lived a long life. I don't know how long a parakeet, but I think we had him for 10 years.
I think that's long.
Yeah, it seems like it. And
from what I remember,
I was gone to Rome for 2 years, and then I came home, and I came in at night, and we'd always put a cloth over his cage so he could sleep. They go to bed early, birds do, but as soon as I came in, it was like 10 o'clock, and he heard my voice. He starts chirping. He hadn't heard my voice in 2 years, but he knew it right away. So Mac and I were buddies. And
that is awesome.
People always ask, are there going to be animals in heaven? Well, we just don't know. I mean, this weekend's reading St. Paul talks about, what eye has not seen, ear has not heard, it hasn't even dawned upon us what God has in store for those who love him. We just can't fathom but no one's going to be disappointed. So I mean, will Mac be in heaven? Will
Right.
Kevin the pigeon? Are they hanging out? I mean, what's heaven like for the? I don't know.
Exactly.
I mean,
I know. I wonder. I always wonder. You get there, all your former pets, flock to you,
Right.
or are they not there at all?
Where are the hawks?
Where are the hawks?
Are they
I
in
know,
purgatory?
right.
I mean, like, you ate Kevin, so you have to stay here for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he tasted great. Well, I mean, that notwithstanding, you're still gonna have to. I don't know.
That's right.
We'll
As long
just
as
have to
no
wait.
fleas and ticks. I guess I'm not leaving heaven for sure. God willing I get there, but
Mosquitoes, deer
mosquitoes,
flies,
all
things like that.
stuff.
Yeah.
Can we not have that?
This is we're seeing parts of Marathon County I've maybe seen once. I've been out here one time. I'm looking for routes. These are places you could ride your bike. They're just it's pretty out here.
Yeah, this is amazing.
That's one thing when you watch the video, you can kind of sense that you've been in cities.
Yeah.
You've been out and about, and so.
I know where they are.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and I've done several in La Crosse, so if I'm in La Crosse, I try not to take the same route I've done before. At least he's got a thing that he just does a circle.
It's pretty when you get outside the city. I mean, you get the bluffs and the river, and you get a lot of different routes that you can take. But
because Father Gunther and I ended up going out to the middle of nowhere, and he taught me how to shoot a crossbow.
Crossbow, I saw him.
And, and we had the GoPro set up on the crossbow, but technology and all that other stuff.
You showed the target though.
We
after
showed
you
the
shot.
target.
Yeah, you did pretty well.
I did all right. The only problem is that we didn't edit it out. Is when Father Brandon shot and showed me how to do it. It scared me, and I'm holding the GoPro, and I jumped and I screamed a little bit. So it wasn't the most
manly
proudest moment.
Well, right,
had,
and they couldn't edit that out. Well,
maybe they did it to leave it in just.
Yeah, sometimes shame is a motivating factor. I mean, I wouldn't use it too often, but
no. But and it was kind of a last minute thing. He was just like, I have a crossbow. Yeah,
so he owned that was his crossbow.
Yeah, he had been hunting the day before.
Do you know it wasn't that long ago? Crossbows were only for people that were handicapped, basically. Now
really?
I know that's all changed since I was a kid. I mean, crossbows were like cutting edge sort of technology.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was just common that if somebody was in a wheelchair or whatever, it gave them an advantage because they're much easier to shoot than you have to practice with a compound bow. I mean, that's a lot of work, and even then you get a little excited if it's a big buck. They call that buck fever, and you're shaking a little bit. I mean, it's not so easy.
Wrong.
Right.
And that's it. Yeah.
My dad said in the military when they would shoot, they had an acronym, and it was BASS: breathe, aim, slack, squeeze. So you don't pull the trigger, which jerks the gun, but you squeeze it. So you'd breathe, aim, then slack, let a little breath out, and then squeeze.
That's good.
Sounds great. I can't hit anything. Can't hit the broadside of the barn, but it must work for somebody.
Yeah, someone it works for sure.
I'm glad I don't have to provide. If I had to, live by hunting and gathering, it'd be slim pickings.
Yeah. So you don't hunt at all?
I grew up, hunting, and I've shot some deer, but I think now I've probably hit as many deer with my car as I've shot, which is I hit one last spring on the way home from my mom's early in the morning. So that was a total. I had a Ford Focus, and if you hit a chinchilla with a Ford Focus, I think you've totaled it. So anyway, that was the end of that car.
No.
So I don't get out. I love eating, wild game. It's healthy, lean, good for you.
Yeah.
I love the idea of hunting and fishing, but I just don't have a ton of time, and I guess it's probably not the highest priority.
Sure.
If I get time to get out in the woods, I'll go for a walk.
Oh, sure.
I usually in deer season I'll go down to where I grew up on the farm, and I'll carry the gun, but I haven't shot anything in many years. So.
Yeah. Well, so besides biking and hiking and walking, do you have other hobbies you'd love to do?
No, I'm a pretty dull guy. I love to read. So I'll watch a good show, good movie. Right now there's this 6-part series on Les Mis, which is put out by the BBC, and it's a friend of mine recommended it. It's fantastic. So, things like that. But I like being around people. Yeah. And I guess I was shy and introvert growing up. A lot of priests actually are, but God helps us to grow into the life that He's given us. So I do enjoy, being around people. I do get tired, it doesn't energize me like an extrovert.
Yeah.
It does drain me, but at the same time, I'm happy as a parish priest. I'm happy to be around the people of God.
Yeah. That's the thing. I remember too. I think I'm technically an introvert.
Right.
And always extremely shy in school. I was so shy in school that when the teacher would call on me, I would blush. But then the class would see me blush, and they'd all stare at me to watch me blush, and then I'd blush like a whole other shade
of course,
of red.
right.
You know, so it was
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
And I would, like, getting up and doing reports and class stuff, I'd be literally shaking up there. And somewhere along the way, that went away. But I remember I took a personality test, and I came out as an introvert, which shouldn't have been a shock, but I kind of freaked out. So I'm like, I'm in youth ministry, I can't be an introvert. Like, that's not what you're supposed to. And then
Right.
I realized, like, but not every person is an extrovert. And you be you, do your thing, and
Sometimes maybe it helps us to be, more easy around quiet kids and not push them to come out of their shell. Just wait,
Right.
because they'll come out when they're ready.
Right.
I mean, it all happens in God's time. So
right.
I was in high school, and this one teacher, at the beginning of this class, he said, "Now, Sam, I'm going to have you come up in just a few minutes, and you're just going to give an impromptu speech, okay? Just extemporaneous." And I'm like, "What?" And so he waits and he's, "Okay, now, Sam, it's time, but just before you come up, we're just going to everybody take your pulse. I just want to get your heart rate." So we do, and mine's like 200 beats a minute or something, and everybody else is about 60 beats a minute. He's like, "Okay, well, this illustrates what anxiety and nerves do to your heart rate."
Oh,
and anyway,
wow.
Sam, I was just kidding about you giving the speech.
Oh.
Man, I tell you what, that's a sick man. But it worked. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I'm like, oh, so when you're nervous, your heart, yeah. And then the fact that as a priest, we have to do this every day of our life almost. We stand in
Yeah.
front of people and have to give a little talk, and
Yep.
you discover what works and what doesn't,
Yeah.
And I do think that Cardinal Newman had this little thing, cor ad cor loquitur, that heart speaks to heart, that whatever way you can be most genuine, the most, the way
Yeah.
you are, the way God made you to be, and that can be writing it out or just kind of, working it out in your head and speaking. Whatever works, you should do, but just be yourself. I mean, that's going to be the
Yeah.
most convincing. If you're up there trying to, cultivate a certain aura, or
Right.
I want to come off this way. Well, just be who you are.
Right.
And,
Right.
That's going to be the most effective. So, but that God calls introverts to stand before the world is, well, I mean, that's a scriptural, theme, that He chooses the weak to humble the strong. So, a lot of us, I mean, if somebody compliments us, we'd say, well, you can thank God because that's His gift. He gave it to me, but it's not for me, and I'm as surprised as anybody that I could do these things. So
Yeah.
we are out here in the rolling hills.
We are in the middle of.
We've left the Diocese of La Crosse now, so Lincoln County is Superior.
Are we in Superior now?
Yeah, you feel different up here.
It
somehow.
does. It feels. Yeah.
I mean, just because of that Superior name, they've got some issues, insecurities, I think. But
Exactly.
but we're that close. That's the
interesting.
rest of it is all the way to Lake Superior is their diocese. So.
Okay. Interesting. I have no idea where I am.
We see a lot of folks from Merrill, a lot of good Catholics. There's a
Mm.
parish there, and a lot of good people in that area too. And the thing about any city is that it draws people from the whole area. Like people in La Crosse wouldn't drive out to Genoa very often. I mean, who would? Unless
Yeah.
you're Father Slovacic. But
Yeah.
but people from Genoa come into La Crosse all the time. That's typically
Yeah.
how it works. So it's the same with Wausau, that Merrill and Edgar, Stratford. Well, Stratford, those folks probably go down to Marshfield. But a lot of people come to Wausau for various things, and we see a lot of visitors in our city parishes, which is nice.
That's great.
I've served in this area of the diocese, except for the 9 years I was in La Crosse.
Mhm.
I was 2 years, I lived in Pittsfield, taught at Assumption, and then I was 8 years in Marshfield. It was St. John the Baptist there
Yeah.
and Christ the King in Spencer, so I feel very at home in central Wisconsin.
Yeah.
There's plenty to do if you like the outdoors, and you're not far from all the lakes up north, and safe, good place, a lot of good families raising their kids, so
Yeah.
it's a blessing to live where we do, even especially some of the tumultuous times that we've passed through and all the violence in some of the cities. You're just like, thank God we live where we live.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's you see on the news the things that are happening out there, the things that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
It felt unsettled during COVID. I mean, you could tell during the 10 weeks of quarantine, for example, you just felt like, I mean, people, I live on Thomas, and that's a busy street. It's one of the 3 bridges in Wausau. So, and then at night, like after bar time, you could just hear all the noise and so forth. So I just remember feeling kind of like, so I have a baseball bat now. Just, I don't want anything else. I don't want to hurt anybody. But at the same time, you just felt like if somebody broke in and entered, I mean, would I be able to defend myself?
Yeah.
So just the things that you consider about, like, gosh, we have a right to defend ourselves. We don't want to pick any fights, but we probably can't run from any. So anyway, we pray, hope for the best. Our faith has such a beautiful way because Christ gives us the ability, you know, to pray for our persecutors. He's not going to let us indulge in any violence. Except, you know, self-defense. And there's just war and all those things. But we don't want to get too much in the weeds on all that stuff.
No, I mean, it's a good point. It's a good point. I remember one time in Nashville, my wife and I think we were just married or dating. Of course, before we had kids, we went out to dinner, and I wasn't the smartest guy in the world. I parked in the back of the restaurant. It was dark. Parked next to a dumpster. There was no lights back there. We went to the restaurant, came out. It was nighttime, and I went around the car to let my wife in the door, and I was in front of her. She was behind me, and I heard footsteps come around the car behind me, and I turned around, and there was a guy there. And I kind of grabbed my wife and I put her behind me and I stepped in front of her. And the guy saw me do it and he kind of put his hands up. He said, "I'm not going to hurt you." And I said, "I know." Because I was like, okay, I know I'm going to lose, but if I'm like tough guy, if I talk a tough game, maybe he'll leave us alone. And he was just a guy that needed a couple bucks and just to get some food, and that was it. But like my heart started pounding because it was just like, oh, why did I park here? And just being aware of my surroundings and be smart about it. And
thank God it had a happy ending. And then
it was, but
sometimes you wonder, I mean, you know, he was kind of in a defensive position. One time I picked up a guy that was hitchhiking, and I was on my way to Omaha. I used to teach out at the Institute for Priestly Formation, and I picked this guy up, and I was just explaining to him, you know, that it makes us nervous, you know. We never know what kind of a person we're picking up. And he's like, well, have you ever thought that, it makes us nervous too? We don't even know who's going to stop. What kind of, and I said, gosh, I never thought of that. When we were kids, Mom and Dad would always pick up people if they could, and we were always kind of embarrassed, and it was awkward, and that was really common before we were born. I mean, people hitchhike, but you have to be so careful these days. And I just never thought of it from their vantage point. Like, when you're a person that is down and out, you go to ask somebody for something, and they might hurt you. I mean, they manipulate you, and it's theirs is a tough position to be in too. Yeah,
absolutely, and being able to look at people and think, okay, that's Jesus there.
Right.
How do I interact with this person? And,
sometimes it goes better than others. I mean, you know, if we're not disposed, we're not ready for it. And I think sometimes we realize that I lack the spiritual maturity. I need to pray more. I need to grow more. And with God's help, we can. And sometimes in life, you look back, I wasn't ready then for what I'm able to do now. And some people, they look and they feel intimidated, like, I can't do that. Well, no, you're not born in this, with this degree of charity. That's something that cultivating a good prayer life and the works of mercy, corporal, spiritual, all the sacramental graces that you receive, all that stuff is a preparation for whatever is coming. And that's what God wants, is that we're not worthy, but we can prepare. We can work on these things. So Nashville, that's one of the that's a pretty city. I used to have a former student that's a Nashville Dominican there, and she's back there in Nashville now, and I hope to get down and visit. They're a growing order, but even the city, I've been there a number of times. I've never really explored. They've got all the music. Back,
right. I can give you the what you may not know is around, and you can go check out.
They say it's one of the more entertaining cities in the U.S.
It is great. It is boomed since we've been there, but going to school there and having those opportunities, and if you like country music, and
it's got a pretty skyline. It's got that Batman kind of building there.
We used to go and do it in college. We used to go. There was a place in that, I couldn't find it now to save my life because it's been so long. But there was a place called Love Circle, is what it was called. But it was like there's these houses, and you wind up this road, and it's this hill. It's just like a hill, and a grassy hill, and we would go up there and have Bible studies up there, and then you would see the whole Nashville skyline at night, and we'd have Bible study up there, and
Love Circle. I mean, that's not what I would have expected. I mean,
I don't know if that was the name or if that's what someone called. I don't remember, but I just remember like this is the greatest place to go. And then other times we would go and sneak up on the roof of buildings at our school and see the whole Nashville skyline. So,
it's a pretty state. I mean, you cross Illinois pretty flat until you get to the southern part, and then Kentucky's got some rolling hills, and then the same with Tennessee. And then one time we drove through Chattanooga, and I just decided right then and there, I've got to come back here.
Chattanooga is a great town.
Right,
and their aquarium is awesome. If you like that kind of thing, they have a great aquarium.
It was just, I remember coming down, off this ridge into this valley, and it just seemed so picturesque. And I know the Smoky Mountains are just kind of,
Yeah.
And that's that may be the most popular national park, and it's one of those that. My friend who's in Nashville, Dominican, she's a big hiker too.
Oh,
and,
she's in the right spot.
Right, so she sent some pictures in her Christmas card. She's the reason I hiked a lot, the mountains of the 14ers in Colorado. She had an assignment out there, and she was telling me that she did all these 14ers, or the 14,000-foot peaks, and there are, depending on how you qualify, but 52 or 54 of them in the state of Colorado. And she did like a half a dozen of them, so of course I did 2 more. I did 8. Cost me a couple of hips, but anyway, it was, it was just inspiring to get out and you see these things. And so Chattanooga is one of these destinations that I've got on my list. I hope to get there someday.
Definitely. And have you been to Gatlinburg?
That's another famous place, but no, I've not. And that's kind of in the same area, huh?
Yeah, it's out that way.
We used to do these nun runs. We'd take girls to visit convents and monasteries, and probably the most ambitious one, we drove all the way to Birmingham, and there are a couple of orders there. And then that day we left Birmingham. Maybe we were down. Well, yeah, I think that's where we left, and we drove. I have a Port Clare cousin who was in Barnesville, Virginia, so I don't know how long that was. I mean, it was like 12 hours of driving that day. It was insane. But we drove through. That's the time that we went through Chattanooga, and you get the... Is it the Blue Ridge? And then drop down into. She's not far from Richmond, Virginia. So
and that's where I grew up.
We crossed that range, and it's just so pretty.
Yeah,
really. It was it's probably late summer when we were doing it.
It's a great drive. Well, I grew up just south of Richmond, near Virginia Beach, and making that drive from Virginia to Nashville when we were going to school was always awesome. About a 12-hour drive.
I was gonna say that's a hike.
It was a hike. It was a definite hike. But then the first time my wife came out to meet my parents, she flew out over after Christmas, but during the Christmas break, she flew out, and then we drove back to Nashville. And so I'd done that drive forever. This story is a good thing that you went to confession last night, because I'm very directionally challenged. I'm not good with directions at all.
Yeah, if we don't start heading back, we're almost to Canada, I think.
Yeah, actually, I think I'm trying to...
And I didn't bring a passport. They no way the Mounties are going to let us cross the border.
No,
here,
and do I turn up here, I think?
Yeah, what we'll do now is we'll start, gradually. So take a right here.
Heading back, yeah.
Right.
That's what I was
What you can
thinking.
do, too, is you can get out to 51, and then it's a straight shot, but the county roads are fun.
Okay, yeah.
Like, this is a different county, so I don't know Q, but with
will
the
get
angle of
us
the sun
back
and
that
so
way.
forth, I didn't leave much of a bread trail. Probably by now, Kevin, you're pigeonated anyway.
That's
so
right.
Who knows, but,
That's right.
We should find our way. Is your wife? She's from Nashville area?
No, she's from the Milwaukee area.
Oh.
So
How did you meet then?
at Belmont University in Nashville.
Oh.
So I went there for music business and did that for a semester. I majored in everything for about half a semester.
What were you going to do with music business? Sell pianos?
No. I was going to try and work behind the scenes, recording studios, all the business side of all of everything, and
moved to Memphis and discovered Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley. Take a right, yeah. This one takes us all the way back to Wausau.
Oh, we'll
K goes through Merrill.
We'll do
I think
that.
we're north of Merrill by now, but who knows? I don't know where we are. We're north of everything.
So we, I did that, and I realized it wasn't really for me. I mean, it was an incredible program. Just phenomenal. I mean, we got into places that in college you don't get into, and that was part of the schooling, is like, go to this event and be this and do this, and it was one of those things that if you are around, if you meet a celebrity or anything, if a celebrity comes on campus, as a music business major, you were not to talk to them. If you were caught talking, or not talk to them, but getting autographs and being a fan, if you were caught fanning over someone, you're out.
Wow.
So it was like, there's no...
self-restraint.
Yeah, it was like you be professional, and that's what this business is. You're not a fan, and that's what it is. And so... it was such a great program, but I just realized, like, that's not what I'm called to do. And there was a guy that came to campus, gave a talk, and he just said, you need to do whatever you have a passion for doing, and if you don't have a passion for it, then get out of it. And I thought, oh my goodness, like, yeah.
That's a part of discernment sometimes, is the via negativa. It's, it's never a failure to discover this is not what I'm called to do.
Right,
That's a part of... I have a friend that he I think he was Lutheran at the time, went to Carthage, and he got a degree like elementary ed. But he knew that day when he got his degree, or even about that time anyway, he just felt this premonition that I'm not going to really use this degree, and I don't think I'm going to be Lutheran much longer.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he's done a lot of work in the Catholic Church after he converted and raising his family and so forth. So you just, but God doesn't waste anything either.
Right.
Like probably in ways you're still grateful that you were around.
Oh,
that.
I learned so much.
Right.
I learned so much. And I remember even going through my first jobs out of college. I mean, I ended up majoring in religious studies and minored in youth ministry and business, but I ended up working in the corporate world outside of college, and I hated it. And then thank God, the Diocese of Nashville had a position open in their youth ministry office, and that's how I got into that. But I remember thinking, I kept thinking, like, why did I go through all those jobs that were just terrible, and people treated me poorly, and it was just bad.
Right.
And then I started thinking about it. It was like, when I got the job with the Diocese of Nashville, the light bulb came on. It was like, oh, I went to those jobs because I learned how to work with people. I learned how to do emails. I learned how to fax. I learned how to do spreadsheets. I learned how to budget. I learned all these business sides of things that I use all the time.
One of my favorite quotes is from this girl, Corrie ten Boom, and she and her family, they hid a lot of the Jews, so she wrote this book called The Hiding Place, and a beautiful story and all true. And anyway, at one point in the book, she says, that's what the past is for. It's a preparation for a future only God can see.
Mm-hmm.
So God he knows all these things, and somehow he's the master of, like, when we see the mosaic of our life at the end, we'll say, gosh, who put all that together? I mean, that's your life.
Yeah.
And you'll see how God is so good to us. And and we say, well, what about the things that were just wrong and sinful? Well, if you've repented, I mean, if you've made your peace with God, he forgives and forgets, takes away the sins of the world.
Yeah.
And somehow you can be a better person than if you'd never gone through that. Now that is a miracle. That's not something we could explain except by God's supernatural grace. But a lot of us, we'd like to go back and white out some things in our past. But if we did, we'd be a different person.
Right.
And not necessarily a better person.
Right.
Maybe that was the only way for us to become humble, compassionate, learn to imitate Jesus, who loves sinners. He's good to sinners. He sees their dignity long before they do, and he had a way of loving them that some of them, not all, but some of them responded. They changed. Others said, maybe some other time, but I'm having too much fun right now to follow you.
That's right.
But the Lord knew what he was doing, and he never really has changed his plan. This is the one that he's stuck to all his life. So, all those things that you learn, I mean.
Now, were you always thinking I'm going to be a priest, or were you on a different path?
Well, I fought it as valiantly as I could, but I mean, when I was little, different things struck me as things I wanted to do. So my dad remembers when I came home, I was probably 7 or 8 years old. I don't remember it specifically, but I know that I was thinking about being a priest, and he said that I told him that, Dad, I want to be a priest someday. But I also wanted to be an over-the-road truck driver. Growing up on a farm, I thought I could see more of the world. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see things. And then I also remember one time this guy was talking about working in an ice cream parlor, and then you could eat as much ice cream for free as you wanted. So I just was going to quit school right then. I said, well, I know why God made me, Anyway, I started seminary when I was 14 as a freshman. Those aren't many of those programs around anymore, but did I know? No. I suspected maybe, and I kept thinking that if I found the right person, I'd get married and raise a family, and that would be something holy. And I met, really good people, but that desire in my heart was always there. I thank God he had to help me through many, many struggles, and but I know that this is the life that it's his gift to me, and I'm grateful. Confucius, find a job you love and you never work a day in your life. It's still work, but it's you can whistle while you work, like the Seven Dwarfs. I mean, you can be happy in your work. Like, I wouldn't want to do anything else with my life. And for that, I will always be grateful to God. He rescued me from many other things that I could have done. And being a priest is if God calls you to it, you're going to be inadequate. You're going to have all these excuses, and those will be valid. But God, he'll give the grace. I mean, so many things you discover that are a good fit. Like celibacy there's some loneliness, but all human beings have to confront that. But I never even thought that. I always like to read, so I get to read more books than probably a lot of married people do, and so that's a part of my life I never even thought of, that would be a blessing. that would come, at the foot of the cross there'd be some holy things too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, things that you learn. I mean, I worked at Hardee's one time just to get off the farm, and so I've been around enough, and I worked at 3M in shipping and receiving a few summers when I was in college, and I was around enough of those sorts of things to say, I know I'm supposed to work with people, which sometimes I miss the cardboard boxes. They don't talk back. They don't hurt your feelings, Exactly. But I knew that I was supposed to work with people. When I was trying not to be a priest, I was hoping to have like Plan B become Plan A. I studied secondary education and Spanish. I thought, well, maybe I'll be a teacher. Well, then you get ordained, you're like, well, that'll never happen now. But it did. I mean, I taught high school for 11 years. Yeah. So, I mean, all the things that, like you mentioned, the things that I never used those. Yeah, I did. And I learned so much from my students. I will always be indebted to them.
Oh, yeah.
They taught me a lot about human nature and the human heart, struggles, and how we all are God's children. A lot of things to figure out.
Yep.
It just beeped. Is it?
I wonder if it got overheated. We got that one going.
It just turned off. Well, it said 57 minutes, so you got
we got a good amount.
You got a whole bunch.
So that's good. I don't know why it does that, but I don't know if the battery is full, everything's full.
Yeah.
I did everything. But
well, and you're not far from, we didn't quite get as far as Merrill.
Okay.
Now, this is a road I would never ride on. K is a busy road.
This would be something else.
And then these are the kind of hills you get, too, by the way. I mean, for every time you go down, at first, when you're a novice rider, you're like, oh, I love going downhill. No, going down means you're going to have to come back up.
Yeah. Well, that's when people talk about life, like, oh, it's all downhill. I'm like, that's great. Good for you.
Right,
but
right.
No, that's bad.
Yeah.
But no.
Enjoy it.
It doesn't.
It's, you have to... Somebody asked me recently, why pray? I mean, it doesn't change God. No, it can't change God. He's perfect. Why would you change if you were perfect? But what prayer changes is our disposition, our attitude, and attitude is everything. Like, it helps us to accept life on its terms. Like, you can look on the dark side of things, and that's the easiest part. You don't have to have any faith to see evil.
Yeah.
What you have to have faith for is to see the good, and there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
And as you grow closer to the Lord, I think He helps you to, there's a downhill, the valley desolation, but there's consolation too.
Yeah.
And in the hard times, remember the empty tomb, remember the joy of our Lord, and then in the good times, remember the cross. Don't get too excited, not too high, not too low. That's
right.
Easy go. I mean, it's. I think we learn so much. By the time we're done, maybe we've gained some wisdom through our suffering and our time away from heaven.
Yeah.
We're not going to look back and say, what a waste of time. Nah, there's no way. People in heaven say, Lord, it's worth it, and it was necessary. I see that we, in a way, had to go through those things.
Yeah.
The Apostle says it was necessary for us to pass through many trials before entering the kingdom of God. So, how many trials? I just see Father Becker down in Mosinee. He quoted in his parish bulletin about how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop.
That's good.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And then it was like 3, right? The kid lick, hoof. I've never been. I mean, you get tired of licking.
Oh, I eat it.
Right. Yeah, you're just like, I can't do this.
I'm done with it.
I can't do this.
Yeah, I have no patience for it. So, yeah. Well, I know, too, like, we talk about, like with, the Eucharist revival that's coming around, coming around here, and you kind of hit me. I was like, it's not the Eucharist that needs reviving, it's our understanding of it that needs reviving. That's the revival.
It's the same mystery. Jesus Christ yesterday, today, forever.
Yeah.
But we change.
Right.
And that's a good thing. It's like, how did I not get it? A thing is received according to the mode of the receiver. So you and I and every one of us, we're all receivers. But some days we're just not open. We're just in a bad mood. We're tired. We're discouraged. We're anxious, full of fear.
Yeah. And I mean, as I came into the church as an adult.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I didn't get it. I did not understand the Eucharist. I asked all these questions and trying to but this doesn't make any sense. And then people explain it. And then one day, someone asked me, who wasn't Catholic, why they couldn't receive communion in the Catholic Church. And I just started talking. And I was like, oh, I do get it. Because I was able to explain it. Like, there it is. Like, I just didn't know I knew, I guess.
And I wonder, that's a great insight. I wonder if we don't do that enough. Let people share. And because that's what I learned in teaching, is that you find out what you know and what you don't know.
Right.
And that's where you depend on the great teacher, the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Jesus said, there are many more things I'd like to tell you, but you cannot bear them now. I'll send the Holy Spirit to remind you. And he's the one, so he helped you to make that explanation. And all of a sudden, now it's yours.
Yeah.
Now, you,
there it is.
from your own interiority, out comes something you're like, huh.
And I'm not spitting out what I read, which is no problem with that either, of course, but it was my understanding of it that and that's kind of what I like with suffering and things like that. There's been specific moments in my life, like detailed suffering I've had, that down the road I happen to be someone who's gone through the exact same thing. It's like, oh, I can use that because I actually was in those shoes somewhat.
We
this
roundabout, we're going to go straight, because we're starting to head back, I presume, huh?
Yeah.
Don't follow the guy with the loud truck.
Right.
Roundabouts are not something that... So go this way. Oops.
This way?
Yeah. We're just going to take this to... You can go that way, too. That's 51, but we'll just come across town,
Easier.
We stayed the whole time on the west side of Wisconsin River. I always pick on people on the east side. You just can't trust them over there.
Right.
But we don't have many parishes in our diocese that are on the east side of the Wisconsin River.
Oh.
Most of them probably are in Portage County, like, because Stevens Point... most of the city, I think, is actually on the east side, so that's a number of parishes, and then there are a number in that county that, but when I was in Pittsville, of course, in Wisconsin Rapids, I think there are 2 on the east side, 2 on the west side, but west side's where it's at, Chris. I mean, you just, we're kind of hemmed in by those rivers, the Mississippi on our west and Wisconsin on our east, so... But learning the faith and passing it on, teaching it is... We had to do that when I was in college seminary, teach CCD, so I was teaching 3rd graders, and that was much more challenging than I expected.
Yes.
It's hard to engage them. I mean, Wednesday night kids are tired. That's some of the hardest teaching there is, you know, and then because it's the faith, I think one of the effects of original sin is a kind of a resistance to God and the things of God, or, that we say that it's boring, and that's not true, but it's too challenging. I don't believe this. You're not going to tell me how to live. So there's a kind of rebellious spirit sometimes in us. All these things.
I wonder sometimes with people, and I don't know. Tell me what you think. It's just kind of one of those pondering things. If people are so accustomed to hearing about, we have such a loving and merciful God who loves you and, do anything for you. And that's all amazing, of course. But I wonder if people use that and like, well, yeah, he loves me, so I can do all this over here. And then when I die, he loves me, and we'll just do that then. And there's almost like no urgency to understand or participate in the salvation story,
Yeah, I just think that, like Jesus said, that they look, but they can't see. They listen, but they can't hear. That, that our senses were dulled by sin. And I mean, for a lot of people, and there are a lot of different ways to come to God. I mean, there's beauty, goodness, truth, the transcendentals. But for a lot of people, it's suffering. Yeah. It's that you're all of a sudden at the end of your rope. That's why I like the adage about no atheists in foxholes. That when your back is, up against, and you're facing your own mortality, then like this guy, John Newton was his name. He was a pirate. Well, not a pirate, but a sailor. And he was a rough guy. And he was out in at sea, and there was terrible storm, and he was certain he was going to die. There was just no way out of it, and he said a prayer. He said, my God, have mercy on us. The storm abated, and that haunted him. I mean, he didn't know that necessarily that he said it and then God but he wondered, if there was a God, why would he listen to a guy like him? Anyway, that began a long conversion for him, and eventually he lost his sight, but not before he did an awful lot of the abolition of slavery in England, and he wrote a famous hymn called Amazing Grace. Yeah. And he's the guy, they made a movie about his life, and it's very beautiful, but that, until he had that experience of suffering, of fear, like I might die, then if you are out there, God, and this is Pascal's wager, you got nothing to lose, I mean, and everything to gain. Yes. So why wouldn't you? This is what W.C. Fields, who was he was a kind of maybe a little bit vulgar at times as a comedian, but one time somebody caught him reading the Bible, and they're like, W.C., you're not even a believer. I mean, why are you reading the Bible? He's like, looking for a loophole.
Oh.
So anyway, I just think that in the end, when the Lord comes, I hope that our hearts, recognize Him. But maybe we make it too easy. I don't know. It's there's not a perfect way.
No.
Prayer and fasting helps to dispose people. So we owe it to the world to really, like with Lent coming, to really engage that, because our lives can bring grace in, and those graces will affect people that we may not ever know. We can't save anybody. That's God's job. But we certainly can be a part of that, and that's what He wants. Is like, wouldn't you want to engage this? And and that makes our life worth living. Like, don't be a spiritual couch potato. I mean, you have so much potential. You could do so much good. And I think that that's the only real sorrow, is that, well, we're not saints, but we could be with God's help. It's not over yet. But when we catch ourselves, I just wish I were a better person.
I think that's the sorrow I fear the most, is God willing getting to heaven and God showing me, if you had listened to me here, this is how much more full your life could have been.
Well, that'll be purgatory, because if you get to heaven...
Right.
But purgatory, I do think that purgatory could be the sadness of, like, now I see all I could have done, and I didn't. And I knew, Lord, at some point, I knew I should have, and that sadness won't fit in heaven, so God will have to heal that. Like people that just kind of, were lukewarm or flippant about their, but deep down they knew, they just were afraid. They got into the bad habits, laziness. I like my Sunday morning. I just, I watch TV, I go for a walk, I go hunting, fishing, but I just never really worshiped God. And I knew that I should have. So anyway, the famous story of St. Hubert, who was, hunting on Sunday, and then he gets this vision, right? And Jesus speaks to him. Well, not everybody gets that. So what about the others? Like, Jesus, if you would have spoken to me, maybe I would have, followed. So I don't know. The Lord has a lot to sort out.
It kind of makes me think of Oskar Schindler, who saved all the Jews and everything, and he did all these great things, but then at the end of that time, he's, I know in the movie, and I don't know if that's a direct quote or not, but he's looking at this watch could have saved this many, this ring could have saved this many, this car could have saved this many, and I kind of think about that with my own life. If I had done this, I could have done, God could have used me here,
Yeah, I think there's a holy restlessness that we never, the saints never felt like, they had done enough. John Paul at the end of his pontificate wondered if he had been strict enough, that maybe in some cases he should have been a little bit more of that tough love. And, we know that he's a saint now, but saints aren't perfect people that don't have any problems. The little flower Saint Therese, she said, hey, if the saints came back and read the books you people write about them, they would just say, oh, you missed all the you missed all the drama, you missed all my struggles. Some saints didn't sin much, but some really struggled with heavy temptation, and in some cases for most of their lives. But they loved God, and they accepted His help, and that changed. The trajectory of their life. Can we let God love us in our sinfulness? Easy to come when I got everything, like, Lord, I'm having a good day, and I'll let you love me now. But I let you love me when I'm sad, vengeful. I'm petty. All these kinds of things. So
I think that goes. It's funny because I think that goes right back to what you said just a little while ago about being authentic and genuine. And not putting on an act, and I have to be this, this, and this, but just being me, and just let people see a human being.
Nathaniel Hawthorne, I think it's in the Scarlet Letter. There's a quote about no man can wear two masks without sooner or later losing track of which is the real me. And it's and that's where the C.S. Lewis wrote a book that was a Greek tragedy that he kind of baptized, Till We Have Faces. And how could we look at God until we finally can look at ourselves, and we can finally be what we were meant to be. So St. Catherine of Siena said, become what God made you to be, and you'll bring fire to the earth. So that's our goal. Become what God wanted us to be, and that's what we desire. That's our deepest desire. And once in a while we experience it. If we take these kids on a mission trip, for example, and you see, especially the guys, when they would do something for others, they just felt something and that made faith real for them. We're going to take a right here. That is something that, especially for men, women are more relational, so they understand prayer a little more intuitively. But a man, like a mission trip, can be a real experience of, like, that's what the gospel is. And when I love my neighbor, I feel the love of God in me. It awakens
Yeah.
something. So
Yeah.
right down the road here, St. Vincent de Paul, and Catholic Charities is very active here.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you always want
Yeah.
people get involved, engage that stuff. I mean,
Oh,
go do
yeah.
something for others, and
Absolutely.
it awakens what otherwise might just lie dormant forever. You know.
Yep. And I know when we would do the mission trips, I would tell the kids that were going, or even the adults too. If you end up in a conversation with the homeowner, don't feel bad about that.
Right.
That's the job.
Right.
Yeah. Fixing the house, and that'll all come. We'll get it done. But the job is that
True.
being with them, but also allow that person to talk and allow that person to be Christ to you as well. That you're not just giving, but allow them to give to you.
It's the key.
And so
That does
those
the most
moments
good.
are just
That does the
mind
most
blowing
good.
to me.
Because otherwise they just feel like, well, people take care of me, but do they really care about me? And
Yeah.
that's, like St. Vincent de Paul does these home visits, and you go in and you take a left here. You go in and you meet people, and you kind of hear their story a little bit, and you kind of share things, and that is much more human than just writing a check, right? Just
Right.
You can actually pull in behind
Pull it?
Stacy.
Okay.
Yeah, you can pull up the next side, in case she leaves. You can just pull
right up
Yep.
here. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember too, like going on the mission trip as a kid, and I remember we worked on this lady's house in the Appalachian Mountains. I think we were doing roofing for her, and we went down. She said, "Come in for lunch," and she had nothing basically. And I, in my head, I'm like, I feel terrible. I don't want to eat her food. She doesn't have it, you know.
Right.
And I remember our adults told us, they said, you need to let her serve you. And every day we went into her house for lunch, and she had a full like Southern meal spread on the table, and it was so good. And it was her way of serving us, and we had to.
That was a gift to her.
It was yeah, and I'll never forget it. Her name was Birdie. She used to send me Christmas cards, all of us Christmas cards.
Yeah.
You know, it was like just very special, and that just like it changed the way I saw everything for sure.
When we took the kids, we used to go to Mexico. I'm trying to remember. That was before your time, 2005 to 2007.
I came in 2006.
Yeah, so we would cross the border down there, little Agua Prieta, and these kids, there was an orphanage there, and every year we'd get there, the kids had all made us gifts. And our kids would always like, they don't have anything. But I said, look at, poor people want to give something too. That's something you might take for granted, but they never get to give anything to anybody. Mm-hmm. And these kids, when our students would open their little gifts, the kids were beaming.
Yeah.
Like, I made that for you. And it was just little simple things,
yeah.
you know. But it was such a blessing. I mean, I think that we forget that one of the hard things about being poor is that I don't feel like I have anything to contribute. So listening, letting, because they have a certain wisdom. Mm-hmm. Poor people have a certain piety.
Yeah.
They seem very open to God. It's been my experience anyway. And you know, the more you give, the more you receive. So they want to give too.
Yeah, I've just learned that people who seem to have nothing actually have everything.
Right.
So,
right. I mean, the things that are like Pope Benedict said one time, the best things in life really there's no cost. To a sunset, a kiss, the words "I love you." I mean, all these things they're priceless, mm-hmm. and those are accessible to every human being. Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, that's true. It's a good way of looking at it. So.